We explored the Pascal's Wager back when I first had this channel. Now I've learned of a different paradigm. I'm going to call it the Peterson Wager because a lot of the things that Jordan Peterson in his functionalist way of explaining religion, faith, and Christianity seem to lead to this. Really something I wanted to explore more because it's a different way of thinking about the Pascal's Wager. The thing about Pascal's Wager you could say is based in fear. And ultimately, if you really analyze in a more deep level, like a philosophy behind a philosophy, Pascal's Wager is not even trying to explain to you in a logical way whether you should accept faith. Pascal's Wager is in a more deeper meta level, trying to explain to you that the fact that you can even ponder this wager is a proof of something. So it's a second order type of proof. But again, I'm not going to go that direction because that's going too deep and it's too early right now. This is what I call the Peterson Wager or maybe the Christian Wager. So this one I think is just based on pragmatism maybe, although this one could be argued is based on pragmatism too. Anyways, I'm using a lot of big words. It doesn't matter because ultimately let's just explore. If you guys aren't familiar with Pascal's Wager, basically it's a way of saying, so let's look at this from like a decision theory standpoint. If there is a God, and this means if there isn't a God and you can believe in God or don't believe in God or accept whatever word you use for faith, if there is a God and you believe in God, that's really good, right? Then you end up going to whatever, there's an afterlife and you do well. That's infinity. That's the sign for infinity. So what I'm showing here is what you're getting out of it. You get infinite benefits, right? Eternity in heaven. If you believe in God, but there's no God, well, maybe you live to kind of a restrictive lifestyle. So depending on who you kind of ask, it's probably somewhere along the lines of, I'm just going to give it a random figure. Some people might interpret this as, you might live not a good life, so let's say -10, or you might live an okay life, right? I don't know if you can see that well, but now if you don't believe in God and there is a God and this is some kind of faith that is not a fan of that, then you're probably not going to do well, right? After this worldly life, you're going to go somewhere that's not good. Now, if there isn't a God and you also don't believe in God, well, I guess it's freed your life to do a lot of things. So that's probably, depending on your interpretation, let's give that 100. It's probably really good, or let's give it 1,000, right? 1,000, that's like 1,000 points right there. What ends up happening is a rational person would go, well, if I believe in God versus I don't believe in God, well, if I don't believe in God and there isn't a God, well, I guess I'm in luck. And if I don't believe in God and there is a God, well, that's really, really bad. Does this beat this? Absolutely not. And then if I believe in God and there is a God or there isn't a God, well, this is way better than this. So ultimately, a rational person using decision theory paradigms would say it's always good to believe in God, right? So that's kind of like the based in fear because of this, right? You're afraid of this kind of like negative infinity or whatever, eternal damnation, whatever word we use to describe just an eternity after this world of a lot of bad stuff. Part of faith is knowing that there's never conclusive proof, so to speak, that you can never be 100% sure that there is someone up there. If he comes down one day and just blows up a bunch of trees and it cures every disease, probably there is someone. But until that happens, you need faith. What Pascal's Wager is assuming, kind of the normal interpretations of Pascal's Wager, is making assumptions about if there's no God and what utility basically means what your happiness or what the good you're getting out of it, what these markers are. So if you modify this Pascal's Wager to what I call a Peterson Wager or pragmatist wager or whatever, you can re-examine the values here of what happens based on a paradigm, not of fear, but maybe more of pragmatism. If you look at this from a more pragmatic standpoint, so let's say you believe in God and there is a God, well, of course, that's still good, right? You have a good life here, and then afterwards you have a good life. Now let's go here to, what if you believe in God and there's no God? Well, maybe some people would argue that even if ultimately it's all false, which right now you can't really prove that, but let's say it's all false, maybe just the spiritual certainty and the community and the higher morals, the friendships, a lot of these things that you get just from this belief, you're still getting a lot. So you believe and there's no God. It's not like here where it's like a negative potentially or a slight positive. Maybe it's something really, really good. So you're getting something like this. So now if you don't believe in God and there is a God, well, probably you're still going to get something really bad, right? If you don't believe in God and there is no God. So the assumption usually for Pascal's wager is, if you don't believe in God, there is no God, well, you don't have to live in fear. You're going to have a better life than people that live in fear. Well, the thing is, if you think about it from another angle, faith and etc., it's not just about fear, right? If you don't believe in God and there is no God, and you're acting and behaving in a way as if there is no God, there is no higher authority, what's to say you're actually going to get positive benefit? You're going to get positive utiles from this. Maybe what actually happens is people who lack faith, who lack community, who lack moral guidance, who lack this kind of accountability, it actually drives them to do more crazy stuff, to hurt themselves more, to hurt other people more. So maybe they're actually getting something like this, like negative 10,000 utiles or something. So now if you look at it from a more pragmatic standpoint, no matter if there is a God or there is no God, it's good to believe in God, right? Now, if there is a God, what do? It's definitely better to believe in God. If there is no God, it's still better to believe in God, right? It's still better to believe in God. I mean, basically, if you apply this kind of pragmatist, or maybe you're trying to be more positive, as in, it's an economic term meaning descriptive. You're trying to be more descriptive of what actually happens. It even more justifies having some kind of faith. And again, faith is not something you do from a pragmatic standpoint. It's not something you do because it can benefit you, right? Faith is something that comes to you. But if you had to justify it logically, it can be justified logically. And that's what I realized yesterday when I was talking to a member of my church group. He was like, well, is there a better alternative? And that's what got me thinking about all this. You look at the happiest people in this world, they're always people of faith. Maybe there's a reason if you analyze it from this logical angle. But again, I have to emphasize again, faith is not something you choose to have logically. It just happens. If you had to explain it from a logical perspective, maybe this modified Pascal's wager, whatever you call it, a Peterson wager, a pragmatism wager, actually makes a lot of sense. So one more time, if there is a God and you choose to believe in God or not believe in God, it always makes sense to believe in God. If there isn't a God, actually it makes sense to believe in God too. So there is no real benefit from a pragmatic angle of living kind of in a more nihilistic, lack of spiritual, lack of faith type of way. Pascal's wager is a lot deeper than just kind of a logical decision theory explanation, because it's trying to prove that because you actually can wager this, you can actually think about this. It's going more deep. We're not going to look at that now. We're just going to take the Jordan Peterson approach and look at it from a functionalist perspective. Modified Pascal's wager, people. What do you think? Do you think I'm wrong in describing the utiles of the 4 different boxes? Is it more like this? Or is it more like this? Or is it something else? Let us know in the comments. If you like this stuff in 2016, we're back thinking. All right, guys. Talk to you soon.